Then 3, you can tax things. So you tax the polluter equal to that marginal external cost. In that graph, there's that marginal external cost. You pass a law that says the polluter has to pay that marginal external cost, and they'll end up at the optimal point. They won't be at the point they were at. So there are carbon taxes in countries like Ireland, Canada, Germany, Norway, Sweden. Okay? The problem with those carbon taxes is that China, the US, the EU, and India emit over half of the world's carbon. So half of the EU has carbon taxes. The US doesn't, China doesn't, India doesn't. Okay, so if you have taxes in some countries and not in others, what's going to happen? You're an economist now. Yeah. People who don't want to pay the tax are going to move their carbon-creating businesses to countries that don't have a tax. So China's air pollution is really bad because stuff is moved there. Mexico's air pollution is really bad because stuff is moved there. In the United States, we cleaned up our air, and how did we do it? Well, we moved the pollution to Mexico and India and China. Okay, nice of us. Okay. In our world, we also use something called cap and trade. Cap is an upper limit. So we decide that here's the total amount of carbon that can be dumped into the atmosphere. Okay? Then we take all of the carbon-emitting businesses in the country and we give them a certificate that lets them create a certain amount of carbon pollution. Okay? And we give everybody the same, right? So every business gets kind of the same. You know, you get to put 2 tons in the air. Then you let them buy and sell it. So the factories who can clean up their pollution are going to clean up their pollution, and then they're going to sell their certificates to factories that have a hard time cleaning up their pollution. And essentially you'll set up a market in pollution, and that'll keep the total level of pollution down because people who can clean up the pollution can profit by selling their pollution rights. Okay? Cap and trade. Cap and trade. All right, some pollution examples in the world, just so we understand, right? Economics tells us nothing is free. There's always trade-offs. There's costs and benefits. There's externalities. All right, so alcohol. The United States and Brazil, between us, we produce 85% of all of the ethanol in the world, right? For a while, the plan was to lower air pollution by switching from gasoline to alcohol. Car companies were producing these cars that ran on something called E85, which was 85% alcohol and 15% gasoline. And many, many states required oil companies to put, say, 8 to 10% alcohol into the gasoline in the summertime so it would burn cleaner. So all cars were built so they could run with some alcohol in there, at least a little bit of alcohol in the mix. And all right. Well, how do you make alcohol? Well, you make alcohol out of corn and sugar. Okay? So this market for corn and sugar all of a sudden starts growing because all of these oil companies need to buy ethanol. So ethanol production skyrockets in the United States and Brazil. And the price of corn and sugar rise. Well, how much of our food has either corn or corn syrup or a lot. So all of a sudden food prices all over the world were going up, which is a negative externality caused by the production of ethanol. That food prices are going up, and people don't like that, right? Especially if you're poor. You live in a poor country. You don't have much income. Rising food prices are a big problem for you. And in Brazil, it increased the rate at which people were chopping down the Amazon so they could grow more corn to make more ethanol. So when they did the math a couple of years into this push, they realized that it was actually increasing carbon emissions. Between cutting down the Amazon and the other stuff that was going on to increase corn and sugar production, we were actually increasing the carbon bite in the world while we were simultaneously increasing food prices, and this whole thing ended. So you don't see a push at all to switch to ethanol anymore because, Okay. Walmart. A few years ago, we had a visit from a UNLV alum who actually was a vice president at Walmart who was in charge of buying electronics for Walmart for the whole world. I don't know if he's still there. I lost track of him, but for a while, at least, this UNLV grad was the head VP of Walmart for buying electronics. He came to UNLV and went to classes to, give back, and he brought with him the vice president that was in charge of making Walmart green. So green initiatives at Walmart. Okay? So they went through a list of things they were doing: converting to LED lighting, recycling consumer electronics, putting in skylights in their stores so they would have natural light, and closing refrigerators. If you go to a store, the biggest energy waster in the store is when they have a refrigerator or freezer that's just open to the air. And stores have tons of these refrigerators and freezers that are open to the air. What's horribly energy inefficient. Okay? So in closing, it turns out, as they give their speech, they had a list of about 100 things that they thought they could do, and they picked out about 20 of them eventually that they did. Why'd they pick them out? Well, the answer is they picked out things that would actually increase their profits, things that would pay for themselves. Walmart didn't choose to do anything that would lower its profits. They chose only to do green things that would raise their profits, so they could advertise about how green they were being at the same time they were making money off it. Okay? When people say, well, the market's going to solve this, maybe not, because the market is about making profits. Right? Electric cars. Are electric cars environmentally sound? Well, electric cars have batteries in them that have to be charged. Where does the electricity come for that electric car to power it? If you have solar panels on your house and you're recharging your car from your solar panels, you're pretty good. Okay? But in many parts of the United States, if you live in Pennsylvania, probably you're recharging your car from a coal-powered power plant. So you're burning coal to power your car instead of burning gasoline to power your car. How is that better? What's not an OT? Okay? So all over the country, people are using coal or they're using nuclear power to recharge their car. Those things are not better environmentally than driving it on gasoline. Okay? And eventually those batteries stop working. The batteries eventually stop working. Those batteries are full of acid. What are you going to do with them? You can't just throw them into the ground somewhere and bury them because they're full of all these toxic chemicals and materials, and you've got to spend a lot of money recycling those batteries, or they're going to create a waste and environmental problem of their own. So it's not clear that having everybody drive an electric car with the current infrastructure we have in place is better. We need to change a whole bunch of things to make electric cars actually environmentally helpful. Hope we get that. So will technology save us? Is the future going to be beautiful and technology is going to save us? A lot of people who are anti-environment say, look, we're improving technology. Technology is going to save us. The market is still the best way to allocate resources, so prices will change and blah, 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 and we'll invent this new technology and yeah. Okay? There's all kinds of issues with that, right? Why would we push to create that technology? Okay? We know, for example, that the best way to fight diseases is to have a vaccine. Give me one shot when I'm a kid, I never get measles. That's great, right? $20 to have that shot, I never get measles. Well, if you're a drug company, that's horrible. What you want is for people to get measles every year so you can sell them drugs to cure their measles. You don't want some $20 shot that gets... So there's hardly ever any vaccine, unless the government gets involved. We're not doing vaccine development in the United States. Because why? It doesn't generate money. So we can invent all these new technologies, but unless the businesses see them as profitable, we're not going to invent them. Okay? All right. Does the fight against pollution increase global poverty? So if we make everybody be clean, how do we do that in some of the poorer areas of the world? How do we create jobs? What's happened is a lot of the areas, England or India, Bangladesh, countries like that, have taken all this stuff in, right? So all these factories shut down in the United States. We move them. They don't have an interest in cleaning up because the dirty stuff is how they're surviving. Doing that stuff that England and France and the United States don't want to do in England and France and the United States is how they're profitable. There's a body of belief that if we really want to deal with pollution, then you got to, obviously you have to deal with it across the whole world, and you're actually going to destroy jobs in certain parts of the world, and probably you're going to have a bigger poverty problem at the global level than if you don't get rid of the pollution. On the other hand, if the ocean rises 10 feet, that's not going to be good either for people. So trade-offs, right? Economics is all about trade-offs and costs and benefits, and everything impacts everything else. Okay? We have this phrase in economics called a free rider. A free rider is somebody who benefits from something without paying any cost, right? So it's related to this idea of externalities. Everybody wants pollution to go away. Everybody wants the air to be clean and the water to be clean, the oceans to be clean. But the more countries clean and the more countries have rules about how to be clean and the more green the rest of the world goes, the more advantage it is for some countries not to do that. So as more and more countries decide they want to be green, the countries that aren't see bigger and bigger and bigger gains from free riding and not going green. All right? Think about that. How do you incentivize those countries that are benefiting from the desire of the United States to go green? How do you convince them that it's in their interest not to make all that money?